Hello and thank you for coming to McWaters Effect. I'm your host, Matt. Today, I'm going to be talking about Clarence Thomas and what he said about big tech. But first, I need you to hit like and subscribe. Helps the channel grow. Now let's get on with the show. Well, first thing I want to say is this was a written opinion for the court case that came upon the Supreme Court, and they all decided not to take the case because the case was moot. He's no longer president. Really, the case was pretty much about Donald Trump. He was actually blocking people from commenting on his statements on Twitter. And he was getting sued because the person who was commenting said it's against his First Amendment right whenever whenever he was blocking him. Well, Twitter said that was right and went after him for doing so. So that he had to unblock these people because they said it's a public forum and they have a right to say what they want to say to a public individual. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If he's a public individual, that means he has a right to actually be on Twitter then and not be banned off Twitter like Twitter did. Now, if they're a private company, that means that would give them a right to actually ban them. But their argument is since it's a public forum, he cannot shut down people's speech to him by blocking them. But if you're going to go with that argument, then they can't actually throw him off of Twitter. You see the argument here? But anyway, went to Supreme Court. Supreme Court said it was moot. He's not even president anymore. He's not a politician. And whenever they did that, they made it where actually other politicians can start blocking people if they wish. And I'm sure Twitter is going to say, no, you can't. You're a public individual. Well, that's opening them up to a bunch of shit, pretty much, where someone's going to go after them. One of these particular tech companies, them, Facebook, Google, one of them, for actually banning people. Now, here's a story. Supreme Court dismisses Trump Twitter case as moot, as Thomas highlighted glaring concerns of platform power. Well, there should be concerned, especially since when it comes to big tech, they favor liberal and progressive talking points. I mean, look at what Bernie Sanders has said about what Twitter did and Facebook and YouTube has done to Donald Trump. He finds it concerning himself. I mean, the thing is when you give a group that much power, at some point or another, they're going to turn that power on you. It's always happened throughout history, and this would be no different. And he sees that as true, and that's why he's concerned about it. Now, here's a story from the Blaze. Justice Clarence Thomas fired a warning shot at social media companies over free speech. And here's a quote from him. Unprecedented is control over so much speech in the hands of a few private parties. I don't see how anyone could disagree with that. Okay, and here's a tweet from Mark Joseph Stern. Clarence Thomas suggests that social media companies may not have a First Amendment right to regulate speech on their platforms. So in other words, Clarence Thomas is inviting Congress to ban social media companies from engaging in content moderation by stripping them of their own First Amendment rights, transforming them for legal purposes into common carriers or public accommodations. All right, my question to him is he one of these people that actually agreed that corporations shouldn't be donating, shouldn't have massive donations to political candidates and political parties during the 2000s? That bill that tried to limit what they could do in order to limit their control over politicians and the political parties? Or did he believe that they had a First Amendment right to donate what they wanted? Now, my thing is, Twitter is not a person. It's a corporation. So is Facebook, so is Google, so is Amazon. They don't have the First Amendment right. A person has a First Amendment right, okay? This is something that I actually disagree with on Clarence Thomas. He believed that they had a First Amendment right to actually donate the amount of money they wanted to political parties. He's wrong. They didn't. He's right about this part. I don't know how y'all two have flipped, but it's happened. Somehow, there's been a paradigm shift where the Republicans and Democrats have shifted on corporations. Republicans believe corporations shouldn't have illimitable power on free speech or on donations, and all of a sudden, the Democrats believe they do. And the fact is, the reason they do is because Democrats are getting most of the donations when it comes to money from corporations compared to Republicans. And then when it comes to free speech, Republicans are getting shut down on these platforms. And who are these platforms donating to? Democrat parties. These corporations donated $61 million to the Democrat Party. And you don't think they have some kind of bias? They donated nothing to the Republican Party. Now you got Eli here saying this. Clarence Thomas is always looking for a way to make things easier for white supremacists. Really? I'm assuming Eli doesn't know Clarence Thomas is a black man. He went on here on Twitter, do this disgusting comment, and doesn't realize the man he's talking about is black. I saw one comment on Twitter. He erased it, but I saw the comment. He said that this guy, Clarence Thomas, I can't believe he still has a job, and he's a white supremacist. First thing, do you even know who Clarence Thomas is, buddy? And number two, he's a Supreme Court justice. He's there for life, or until he retires. And then, he's a black man. And of course, he erased it because he realized he looked him up after he wrote the damn Twitter comment and found out, hey, he's a black man. And he looked like a freaking idiot. That's the problem with Democrats. They react emotionally instead of with logic. And then when they realize, hey, I made a mistake on this, they just erase it and don't say nothing. Or either they double down on it and try to present the lie as a truth. And if they say it long enough, at some point or another, people are going to believe it's actually true. And here's another tweet from this guy named Justin Armish. Justice Thomas takes an anti-free speech inconsistent. Justice Thomas takes an anti-free speech inconsistent with his prior stance on in deeply short-sighted Section 230 protections, the freedom of free speech on the internet, and intended consequences of the leading. It will be devastating, perhaps most of all, to conservatives. First thing, when Section 230 came out, there was no inconsistencies about what these big tech companies were doing to Democrats and doing to Republicans. They treated them the same. All of a sudden, in the last two to 3 years, you have inconsistencies. They treat one group different from another. They wouldn't even be talking about it if they would actually just be fair. Perfect example is Gina Carano. When she got banned, she didn't get banned. She got fired, though, at Disney for putting on her Twitter account. The last thing she put on there was comparing Republicans to the Jews back in World War II. Okay? Bad analogy. I admit that. She got fired from Disney for doing that. But you have Pedro Pascal, who did something similar, and he didn't get fired. Matter of fact, the Disney actually supported him in his beliefs. But the difference is she was conservative and he was a Democrat. He was going after Donald Trump. So it followed their beliefs. And really, Disney's part of big tech too. Now, here's the story here. Clarence Thomas really wants Congress to regulate Twitter moderation. Yeah, he does. He doesn't think that the judiciary needs to be making law. That ain't their job. Their job is to actually look at the law and decide whether or not it's constitutional or not. That is their job. It is not to actually make law and try to execute the law. Congress should have done this a couple years ago, but they didn't. And now, the Democrats run everything. They're not going to do anything about it because it favors them. Why would they do it? Just like if it was the opposite way around, Republicans were running everything, and everything that was happening on these platforms were favoring them. Would they change anything? Absolutely not. It'd be stupid for them to. Of course, if this was happening to Democrats, there would be huge outrage. They'd say it was racist, sexist, homophobic, so on and so forth. Republicans just say, hey, it's not fair. We need to do something about it. It needs to change. And Democrats are just throwing back at them. You're racist. You're sexist. You're homophobe, transphobe. Whatever they want to think of today. Call them all sorts of phobic, all sorts of racist, and everything else, making words mean nothing. Instead of going after people that actually think that way, they're throwing at people that don't. All right, now it's time to give my opinion. Really. When he put that 12-page opinion out, it's pretty much a warning shot to the big tech companies. Either you regulate yourself and fix what you're doing, or Congress is going to have to do it, or at some point or another, if it has to be, it will be the judiciary that will do it. And I'm sure way he feels, same way I feel about it. They need to fix it themselves, where it's actually consistent and fair to everybody, and where you're not closing down people's speech. Just because you don't like the speech, that don't make it hate speech. In the same way, if you don't agree with it, such as not agreeing with what's going on in Georgia with their voting ID law. The idea that it is Jim Crow era law is ridiculous, especially since it affects everybody in the state. It doesn't affect just one group of people. That would be considered racist or sexist or whatever you might want to call it. But this goes after everybody. Another thing about these big tech companies is there's such a large division in the United States between the left and the right, where them doing what they're doing, they're just making the division bigger, where people can't agree on stuff and can't, if you're a Republican, all of a sudden, you're racist, you're a bigot, so on and so forth. If you're a Democrat, Republicans call you, actually Republicans don't call them names. We just tell them they're wrong. You're basing your ideas off of non-factual evidence, and so on and so forth. We try to be apathetic of what they're saying and understand what they're saying. And then when we just see inconsistencies and no logic in it, we point it out to them, and all of a sudden they throw, "You're racist," so on and so forth. Instead of trying to explain it better, they don't want to explain anything. If you don't believe what they believe, you're wrong, you're racist. And that's what they did to Donald Trump when he was president. He's treated unfairly by the media and by big tech. All right, guys, now it's for my quote of the day. Socialism in general has a record of failure, so blatant that only an intellectual can ignore or evade it. Quote, Thomas Sowell. All right, guys, this is the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed. Please hit like and subscribe. Helps the channel grow. Peace.